I've actually seen you in debates and thought you were well spoken and thought you raised some good points.
Oh, thank you.
I've seen you in comment sections. I think a couple times, and it seems to me you're relatively serious, and it seems to me you're at least relatively open-minded.
Yeah,
Now,
I like to think of myself that way.
yeah,
I'm a little bit less patient in the comments section.
well, I think that's everyone,
Yeah,
not just you.
yeah.
I don't know. Have you seen any of the discussions I've had aside from Nephilim
No,
with
I
you?
last night was the first time I was made aware of you.
Okay.
Have you been on
Well,
any of the debates, like modern day debate channel?
I did one on modern day debate, but because I'm just honestly looking at the text and not dealing with any presuppositional ideas about the text, the man and I, which was, oh my goodness, stuck on a name. Um, all right, so that's not going to work. And the more I think about it, the less likely I will remember it. The gentleman and I ended up agreeing about the text, that the Christian text describes not describes pantheism, not theism.
Okay.
And I know that Christians don't look at it that way, but I mean, really, truly, it does. And I think that can be shown pretty easily if you don't have a deep dogmatic view about it. And I've been on Atheist Edge twice. I had a 20-minute conversation, impromptu, unprepared, and with no citations, with one Matt Dillahunty,
Oh wow.
and I think I did okay. I didn't run away with my tail tucked between my legs, but he did beg the question because I was obviously getting around to saying why I think that DNA contains information, and with the information that it contains, it has to be a product of mind, and it does have the products of speech. It has all the aspects. And I was making that argument using the SETI program. You're familiar?
I've heard of it.
SETI is big dishes pointed at outer space, trying to find radio signals that have repeating pattern and possibly information within the signal.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was going about the bush, but he's a smart guy, and he figured out what I was doing. So he cut me off at the pass, which I think is cheating, actually. And they didn't put his name on the video. Now I think Matt Dillahunty's name is a guaranteed pretty good number of views, and they did not put his name on the video, and there's no explanation, though I inquired.
Hmm.
So I think he got really close to not liking what I was doing there, which is not a proud statement. I just feel like I was, for unprepared, putting on a pretty good show. Not that evolution and biology are my strong suits, not at all. It's just I have some objections. But anyway, I've been on the Raging Atheist, Skylar Fiction a couple times, Raging Atheist a couple times, few others. But anyway, I emailed you a link to a playlist, and all that's on my playlist.
Okay. Yeah, I clicked on it for later, so I'll check it out.
Right on. So I wanted to open a discussion with something fairly lighthearted, and because you don't know me very well, and I mean, I respect you as a human being, but I don't know you very well either.
Yeah.
The handle, that's an old-fashioned term, sorry. What do you guys call it? Avatar name? What do you call that? The snake was right.
Username, I guess.
Username. I'm 51 years old. The username that you use, the snake was right.
Yeah.
So that seems to be a reference to the Garden of Eden, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is the total idea behind that phrase? The snake was right.
Essentially just that the knowledge that the snake was saying was contained within the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. It was, regardless, kind of the context almost. It's the knowledge is worth the risk and the punishment. Essentially, is like a kind of a poetic truth that I've been exploring recently.
Well, that's interesting.
And just kind of in general, I think that that story resonates with me in the sense of, because I look at it as God is withholding this knowledge, and the snake was correct in pointing out that he's trying to hold you back, and essentially, I guess a tagline I use a lot is, knowledge of good and evil is good. So
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Knowledge of good and evil would be good. In fact, it would be necessary for adulthood.
yeah,
If I can go that far.
I agree.
So I think the entire story, and I can promise you that you've not heard this. I think the entire story of the Garden of Eden is in some ways metaphorical, in some ways literal, and I'll explain as we go through the conversation, or we'll discuss it as I go through we go through the conversation. Forgive my clumsiness. I think it all hinges on one phrase. So I think that one phrase is "thou shalt not." So you were raised in a Christian society, and I think you said that you weren't forced into a belief system. You were given freedom, even as a child.
That's right. Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Great. That's very wise of them. I have to agree. And you sit pretty much agnostic. Is that right too?
I
No?
guess maybe in a technical sense, but I definitely do subscribe to like positive atheism for like declared gods, like the Christian God and stuff like that. But
Well, that's a long ways off in a topic, yeah. But
yeah, but I would still describe myself as an atheist because I don't believe that there is a God. I don't know how technical you want to get, because I don't know if I subscribe to the positive claim that there is no God, but I would be comfortable stating that there are no leprechauns in the same way that I would be comfortable stating there are no gods. But that doesn't.
I
but I'm
would
not
have to say you
precluding
probably
the
don't have
chance.
much evidence to it. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I ran over you. Please finish that sentence because I missed it.
Oh, I was just saying, but that doesn't preclude the possibility that I just am missing something, or we just don't know something yet.
Well, that's pretty open-minded of you. I have to say I think that's an honest position to hold.
Okay.
And I think that in your statement, you also pointed out some are not holding quite that honest a position, although they have their reasons. Okay, so I ask people to consider something about just that one phrase in the Garden of Eden, because it changes the context of the entire story and actually makes the story more agree with the way you're seeing it, or the statements you've made about it.
Okay.
And I think that's interesting. So let's say I said I use the same phrase "thou shalt not," but I use it in two different ways. I could say, "This is my pack of cigarettes. Thou shalt not take a cigarette." Now, if I say that to somebody, I'm showing a claim that the cigarettes belong to me, and because that I have more right to it than someone else, and I get to decide if they have one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that, I'm denying them a right, okay, or a privilege. On the other hand, if I were to say, "Thou shalt not jump into outer space using only your legs," now that's a true statement. I don't think anyone's done that yet, and I don't expect to see anyone do that. But I use exactly that same phrase to make a declaration of inability. Thou shalt not.
Okay. I follow so far.
Does that make that's pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me apply that to the story of Adam and Eve. Thou shalt not eat or consume of the tree of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, lest ye die. People leave that part out, lest ye die. And that's a very important phrase too. So I ask people if they believe that people on this earth have decided, do understand, and I would think that would cause agreement, although that's going too far, on what good and evil are.
Sorry, you glitched out for a second. What could you ask again?
I said in your own opinion, do people alive today know the difference between good and evil?
They think they do. I think some people, I'm not sure if they do or not, but I think there is a way of objectively at least getting close.
I think
Some people
in
probably do.
morality we do grow and we are trying to become better, and that's excellent. But that's really not the question, though. The question is, do we have it?
Mhm. I mean, I'm a subscriber to objective morality. I think moral relativism is self-defeating logically. So
Okay. So do you think that we have an understanding of the objective morality?
I think we have an understanding of like logic and patterns, and we can
Sure.
come to understand morality through that. Sure.
Okay, but do we already? Because you just said we were growing, and I
Like
agree with you. We're growing.
like if we're born with a sense of morality.
No, if adults on this planet have not just morality, but what is evil and what is good, do they understand it worldwide? Generally speaking.
Worldwide, I think. I mean, the basic things like do not kill, do not steal, are pretty
Sure, we agree
universally
on this.
accepted.
Yeah, we agree on a few things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that covers all the nuances of good and evil?
No.
Okay, I would agree with you.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is that the book of Revelation in that phrase was completely correct. That we are incapable of, thou shalt not, eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, understand the difference between good and evil. And it's still true today.
Okay. So, what was the act of taking the fruit?
Well, the act of taking the fruit will be when obviously, we have not, and when we will die. When we eat of it, we will die. So, in the text, in the Christian text specifically, not that I'm unfamiliar with other texts, is two kinds of death described, and actually this is described in every religion around the world. There's two kinds of death. Not all of them use the word death, but they all describe this. That you have materialism and you have spirituality. And a person is born into materialism naturally. Because we develop spirituality if we ever attain that. So you can have an adult who becomes a spiritual person and their materialism has died. They have suffered the first death. That's the way the Christian text puts it. To suffer the first death. And then there's, of course, the death of flesh, and it refers to that as the second death. Later on in some great detail. In fact, I troubled myself to look up the definitions of the words Cain and Abel. You're familiar with that story? It's the next story.
Yeah.
Okay. So the name Cain means transition. You can check me with a Strong's. The name Abel is a description, rather lengthy description, of worldly possessions or materialism. So actually the first story in the Bible describing a death is describing the first death. That is, it's the first death describing the first death, which is kind of a pun, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And it's talking about the individual Cain overcoming his own worldliness.
Okay.
So really, it's a description of the inner struggle, how all of us are in that way dichotomous. If that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
makes sense.
Okay.
And are you familiar with Jordan Peterson?
Only vaguely.
Okay. I really like his takes on biblical stories because it's like an analysis of what it means. It's not precisely literal, and it seems deeper and more insightful. And that kind of what you're doing is reminding me a little bit of that.
Well, it's funny you should mention that particular person after I was talking about that particular story, because I was watching one of his videos and he was going through that, and I thought, man, he's so close. And I made a comment, and then he finished the idea, and he and I were spot on. Although I already understood it that way before I ever viewed anything by Jordan Peterson. I didn't get that from him.
Yeah.
This is just what I read in the text. I don't. There's a lot more, and he's going through it, from what I understand, pretty much book by book, story by story.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
So
I don't think I might have time to view all that, but
yeah, I originally read the Bible in high school because I went to Catholic school. And,
I'm sorry.
Well, but I'm kind of finding new value in the stories in that sense. But it's not really. It doesn't make me believe in the religion. It's just like I have the same kind of experiences with texts of other religions, like even Norse mythology, Greek mythology, stuff like that.
Well, let me ask you, if there was a God,
Mm-hmm.
and that God was our God, and that God cared for us, even lightly, would that God be prejudiced against some groups?
Perhaps.
I'd like to assume no.
Perhaps evildoers.
I'd like to think. Well, yeah, you always have the evil God argument, sure.
Well, evildoers.
What evildoers?
Whoever. I just theoretically, whoever is just does not deserve rights.
Okay, so let's take the easy examples and say that Pol Pot and Stalin should never have been introduced to religion. But what about everybody else?
As far as,
what I would ask a Christian, and I have, and really pisses them off, and they get self-righteous on me.
mm-hmm.
I ask them why their God is so prejudiced.
Prejudice against who?
Certain people groups,
like
entire parts of the planet, everything except the ancient Near East.
Okay, yeah, I follow you.
Now, why is he so small and shallow and prejudiced?
Yeah.
Whereas in the text it says, "I would that all be saved," and then he says in the book of Revelation that there are those who are saved of every nation, tongue, people, and kindred. Well, that's not Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
It's specifically not just Jewish. In fact, it says it more than once. So I think the pride problem is causing a dogmatic view of the text, that it has to be read into it. It's just not there.
Yeah, I think this is a major problem for, all religions, is they spread from a central point and are not universally present.
Well, I think that people have pride, and we'd like to think we're right. I'd like to think I'm right. That'd be understandable. But our pride gets in the way of us being reasonable.
Yeah.
And I see that going on a lot. So you say, people use the words like pagan. Well, the word pagan, it was made up or started being employed as a way to diminish someone, to put them down, and that's a pride thing, and I think that started with the Catholic Church. They started using that term and separating themselves and trying to say they were better than everybody else. I'll give you an example. This rendering right here beside me, that's from chapter 4 of the book of Revelation. Also on my shirt, if you want to take a peek at that. So you got the earth, right? The 24 elders, the four beasts around God's throne and God's habitation. That's You can look up Red Star Kachina, which is a Zuni Indian Native American um, costume that they use for religious practices, and the costume is exactly this. But that costume is older than the invasions and the discovery of this continent. Much older, but it was presented in the Old Testament. It was presented in the New Testament, and it's that's ancient Near East. Obviously, these people didn't know each other existed nor share any information, and not just Judaism and Zuni, but I could point it out in Japanese art. I could point it out in Hindu art. I could show you a Hindu god that has that same description. I mean, it's literally everywhere, and it just goes on and on and on like that. And there's an equivalent. There's an equivalent in of everything that's in the Bible in every religion, and I see nothing left out, and I see nothing added. Is it said in different ways? Well, yeah, it's said in different ways. I just don't care about that because I understand there are, societal differences that would require it being said different.
Mm-hmm. And I think my problem with that is kind of just. Hold on, I kind of lost my train of thought, but
I was saying how it's all one thing.
yeah, I think that. I mean, that's definitely the best argument, I think, for theism. But let's see. But
I don't think so.
So I think the
Actu-
problem there would be, how do you determine like which parts are real and which parts are metaphorical and which parts are literal, and this is
Context.
kind of, yeah, but it's kind of a case by case basis at that point. But that's kind of like where I'm at with a lot of the creationists. They're like, well, it has to be literal. There's no other way to interpret it. And I'm like, some parts could be metaphorical or poetic. But how are you supposed
I'll
to
tell
know?
you how we normally test those things. How we normally test those things is, first of all, does it have applicability? Does it work where it should? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is, or universality. The second thing is, does it make for a good explanation? And does it justify everything that it should justify? So it applies and it justifies. It has cohesion. And coherency, right? And then beyond that, it should have predictive power. If it's accurate, it should tell you something new that you don't already know. And that's how we test the validity of anything. And this is no exception. If a person's understanding of the text or anything, math, I don't care, biology, doesn't do that, then their view of it is invalid.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So I've adopted a view that does all those things.
it seems that the religions tend to kind of bend towards society's views and evolve to fit the society that it's in. So, and
That's a valid
kind
observation.
that's kind of the power of just literary devices, is it can actually mean multiple things to multiple generations, and it's got all those different messages packed into it because it's just so core to so many stories, so archetypical.
Sure, that's very Jordan Peterson of you, but I agree.
Yeah. So,
But does that show what the text is for or what it's doing?
well, it shows that it was at least had a use to the society. I mean, just from a purely secular standpoint, it would still have a use to the people, to the politicians,
Sure.
every sect of life that was part of that society.
Well,
And
when pushed, Christopher Hitchens said that he would not get rid of religion because it helps certain people and it helps them in very real ways and they need it. And of course these things have been taken advantage of by governments
yeah,
and of leaders of all kinds. Of course. Why wouldn't you?
yeah. I mean, I wouldn't just get rid of religion. I'm libertarian myself, so I think
Right.
people are entitled to what they want, and I'm not smart enough to mess with the system and think that everything's just gonna work out okay. So I don't
Hmm.
necessarily think that people need it, but I just don't. I'm not confident playing God, quote unquote.
Right.
Um, but I would encourage a society that is skeptical of religion. I think that overall would be a better society, but I mean, it's pretty good how it is. It's not like one of my main concerns.
Right. What troubles me is what if it's true? I mean, what if what's actually being expressed, not dogmatic view of it, that can't be true. But what if what's actually being expressed is actually true? There's repercussions, and there's import,
Yeah,
and there's a personal impact on people's lives if it's true.
yeah,
Now,
and
if it's not, it's just a weird story used for controlling folks. If it's not true,
yeah, and I do ask myself this constantly, but inevitably, I end up thinking that about all the religions anyway. What if Islam
thinking
is
what?
true?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It is true.
Islam?
So is Buddhism. So is Wodenism. If I try to say it right, which is poor, but
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, I mean, in that
What's
sense, in the sense that it contains like spiritual truths, I would actually agree. Um, just because it resonates with people, but I'm not sure it has like what might call scientific truths.
I could I could argue for scientific truths
Okay.
within spiritual texts, but it's a very specific view that I have that allows me that allows me to accept reality and science and see that not argued with in spiritual texts. It's a very specific view. I've taught it to I want to say about 40 people, and of them, I'd say 10 got a pretty good grip, and 5 of them totally got it. And of those 5 people, the only thing that became interesting after that was looking at all the interesting ways that the same thing is expressed throughout the world.
Hmm.
Now that's only out of conversations that I've had, perhaps I don't know 3,000 conversations, 5 people. But those 5 people include people who have doctorates, degrees in education and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I'm definitely presenting something that's strange and difficult to understand. It requires an open-minded person who's intelligent. And I'm not just blowing smoke up your butt because I'm talking to you. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Hmm.
These are kind of bigger ideas that I've adopted and come to accept as true.
Yeah, and that's definitely more what I'm looking for rather than kind of the canned, typical arguments you hear from like Nephilim.
Oh, you're definitely not going to hear that crap from me. I think it's crap.
Yeah.
I mean, I really do. I mean, I know first of all, I know it's false, and I know it's based in pride, and I know he doesn't mean to really help anybody. Not actually. Like
Yeah,
he is not making a convincing argument. He is just arguing.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't care about really convincing anyone.
Right.
I mean, I was there kind of to speak mostly to their audience because I don't think they're going to
Hmm.
change their minds, but I like to see what I can do about it. Um, test the
Well, I
waters.
presented something on one of his shows. I talked to him for, I don't know, 3+ hours or something. I don't remember what it was.
Mm-hmm.
But we were discussing just the Bible and just textual criticism. That's what we were discussing. And I said to him that at least part of what is called heaven within the text has to have physical matter. It has to be a physical thing. And he went on for a while, and I brought him back to Genesis 2:5, or around 2:5. I'm not great with numbers, but where it says there were plants before they were in the earth. And I mean, if it says plants before they were in the earth, and that's exactly what it says. Well, plants need support. They need like sunlight, water, minerals, plant stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't have a plant living not on a planet unless it were in some kind of artificial environment, like, I don't know, say a greenhouse. Do we have someone else coming in?
Hello?
Oh, this is the guy with the cool accent.
Yeah, it's me.
How you doing, brother?
I'm fine. Can you hear me clearly?
I do.
All right, wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure how long the call was going for, so I'm just going to listen for a while and then catch up.
Okay. Yeah, he
All right.
wanted to discuss some of the stuff that we talked with Neff about, but
Well,
I see.
I think Neff is not being progressive, and I think it saddens me. And by the way, I should apologize to anyone who has ever been accosted by a Christian, and they just said insulting and diminutive and ridiculous things. I'd like to apologize for that, and really I'm apologizing for the text and not for the person. The way that they're reading it is not reasonable. It makes them say things that are unreasonable. But I apologize for that. I'm sorry.
yeah, I mean, I don't blame everyone for it. It's
Well, I
natural.
try not to be guilty of the same. And really, I ask people to call me out. If you think I'm full of crap, call me out on something, because I'd rather talk about it and we come to an understanding, or I get corrected or something.
Yeah.
I do not think that I am fully adult and that I understand all things. I mean, I'm trying, but I think it's a process. I don't think that's a destination along a path. I think it's to quote Boot to the Head, a path ever into the horizon, if you know what boot to the head is. But anyway. Okay, so I was showing Neff that in the text it says there were plants before they were in the earth. And I asked him to read it, and he read it aloud. And he kept putting a comma that is out of context and changing the context with a comma. And every time he'd read it, he'd throw this comma in right there. And I'd point it out to him, and he'd just say, I didn't do that. I did not put a comma there. And I'm like, dude, read it again. No, seriously, read it again. No, read it. He could not see that's what he was doing, actually changing what he considers to be the unaltered word of God. He's doing it himself. He's altering it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but that didn't change his mind about anything.
Yeah, he can never be wrong. He thinks he's figured it all out. What passage was that, by the way?
I'm sorry, say it again, please.
What verse was that?
I think it's 2:5.
Okay.
But numbers in my brain don't work very well. It's on the first 2 pages of the Bible. It's like right there. It might be 5:2. I'm kind of dyslexic and bad with numbers. I'm sorry if I'm wrong.
All right.
Anyway, if you have a search engine and you typed in before they were in the earth, it's the only place where that phrase appears in the whole work.
All right. I'll look that up later, but
Okay.
I got my marked up Bible here. I guess it's Catholic. Some people don't like that.
Yeah. Well, there are repetitive books that are not in the King James that are included in the Catholic canon, and especially the Ethiopian Catholic canon.
Okay.
And that's okay, but I mean, personally, I don't feel like I need to read the same story 4 times.
Yeah.
It just kind of gets mundane. It doesn't help me to have the same story told four times. Yeah, what mostly was going on with the King James is making it portable. And people object because they took a lot out. Well, yeah, they took a lot out. There was a lot of repetitive stuff. Took a bunch of repetitive stuff out, and that made it, 3 pounds instead of 20. So
Yeah.
there you go.
So what was what were you trying to? What was that idea you were talking about before Stunted came in?
Okay, well, there's actually quite a lot in every religious expression to say that heaven's a solid thing or a series of solid things. And I mean, there's a lot. I mean, you get expressions like chariots of fire. You get things like we are the star children, and someday they return to take us back. But let's take it at probably the religion that would object to me saying that the most. Let's return to Christianity. But if I say of the Bible that what is being described is intelligence that does not reside here and never has, who promises to come back en masse and invite us into their society. Excuse me, doesn't that sound a whole lot like an alien invasion to you?
Yeah.
I mean, but isn't that what every religion describes?
Pretty much. I mean.
Okay, so when I take that kind of a very bland, very overgeneralized overview of the text, I see that absolutely everywhere. And because these people were separated by time and geography, and have exactly 29 count red spherical object, the middle-sized ones counting 4, having 6 wings each. I mean, I can show you that all over the planet. Like, we could spend the rest of our lives just talking about that. There's so much of it.
So like ancient aliens type of thing?
It sure would explain why we ruin the planet if we are the ancient aliens. Why we don't find equilibrium, why we're considered almost a disease on the planet. Makes me think we don't belong here. That's a weird thought, but maybe we just don't belong here.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought to think of, but I mean, I think it still makes sense just based on evolution that,
I think evolution's existence or non-existence pretty irrelevant, actually. Although
Yeah.
Christians get all worked up about it.
Yeah. But I think our voraciousness and greediness, that's explainable just by ape to
Why?
man kind of thing.
Why do apes do that?
Well, they're not quite smart enough to get everything that they want, just like us.
Yeah, don't you think it's interesting just how, and people will get defensive toward this statement, they'll defend animals.
Yeah.
But I once saw a comparison between the bottlenose dolphin and the human intellect,
Yeah, I was.
and they described the bottlenose dolphin as like if it was a postage stamp, we're 3 sheets of paper.
Huh.
Something like that, just so you have a visual. It's a rough estimate, but I think it's relatively accurate. But if that's true, at some point we're so smart we're killing ourselves and
Yeah.
each other, and that is not advantageous to the species.
Well, not every change in a species has to be advantageous. I mean, it could end
True.
up being that we all kill ourselves off, and maybe some mole people are the only survivors.
There's things gone extinct before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the model that I've accepted of of spiritual expression doesn't require me to deny any science. Now, that doesn't mean that I think that all scientists are correct about all things. I don't think that. I think they're humans and they're flawed and they make mistakes and they have their own biases. But I think overall we've got a pretty good handle on most things. At least for the minor things anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't have to deny the age of the planet. But I think it is funny that science will say things like the planet is billions of years old. I think the present estimate is something like 4.3 or 4.6, depending on where you look. And that's fine. Does that mean that life started on this planet 4.2 billion years ago? Well, no, it actually doesn't mean that. It could have started just 1 million years ago. We don't really know how fast this thing went. Yeah, we can carbon date and get extreme ages in lead uranium, did I say that backwards? I did. Uranium lead dating, and get these extreme long ages, and that shows how old this rock is. That's pretty cool. But what's that mean? And then on the flip side of that same coin, the Christians go, or some fundamentalist Christians say, oh, it's only 6,000 years old. Dude, that's impossible. And besides that, the text doesn't say that. That's an estimation of generations through a list of names. And the list of names isn't even a list of names. It's actually its own miniature story. It's just when it got translated, we think they're names. They're not even names, which I find interesting. Either that or hundreds of Jewish women in a row all agreed to name their children parts of sentences, and the parts of sentences make sentences, and those sentences paragraphs, and the paragraphs a story. Maybe they did that, but I kind of doubt you could get that much cooperation. And for that much lineage and for that much time with that number of women. Oh, that's it. And that's granting that dad didn't have anything to say about the name of the kid.
Yeah.
You know that every character in the Bible is appropriately named from their birth to the high point of their life in the story in the Bible? Did you know that?
I think I've heard that.
It's like if you were born and your mom named you Snake was right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just ridiculous. That can't be the answer.
I mean, they could have, whoever wrote the story could have given them a title afterwards.
That's what I'm saying. They're titles.
Yeah.
They're character titles. They're not even actual people's names.
Yeah.
I mean, what if my mom had born me and named me Demolished Doctrine? That would be really interesting. I don't know how the heck she'd do that. And hundreds of them in a row that are perfect.
Yeah. I think we don't necessarily know if that actually happened in the Bible, though, because whoever wrote the Bible could have just given them that title and said that was the title.
That's what I'm saying. It's not a lineage, it's a story.
Yeah.
Can I read you a short story?
Sure.
Okay, this is so I just went back to the Hebrew definitions, and as the names appeared, I wrote the actual definitions of the actual names in the same order. I did not change anything. Okay?
Hold on.
And
I'll be right back.
What's that?
I'll be right back. Couple seconds.
The other gentleman whose name I didn't catch, who was on, you were on Nephilim Free. Yes, you're unmuted now. How you doing, sir?
Right. Well, I'm all right, for the time. What about you?
I'm very, very well. I think I'm going to have to ask you to speak a little bit slower because I think you speak too fast for my ears.
Oh, yeah. I do speak fast. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
So let me try to slow it down. Yeah.
Thank you. Where are you from? What is your background?
Well, I'm from Grenada. It's a country in the Caribbean, an island in the Caribbean,
Okay.
near the south of the Caribbean.
You correctly assume that I'm an ignorant
Um,
American who doesn't know where that is. You're right.
No, no.
No, you're right. You're totally right. I did not know where Grenada was.
That's where I'm from. Well, actually, I was born in Trinidad. That's a country south of Grenada,
Okay.
and I moved to Grenada now, so I'm permanently here. And,
That's where you are now.
Yeah, right now I'm in Grenada.
Okay, so what time of day is it for you there?
What time of day now? It is 8:39 p.m.
8 p.m. Okay, cool. How interesting.
We use Eastern time.
So we're just, what's that?
We use Eastern time.
We use Eastern time. Okay.
All right, I'm back. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's quite all right. Is everything okay?
Oh, wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah, I just had to stop the dog from chewing something.
Okay, so I'm not going to read you all of it because it's 1, 2, 3, 4 pages, not front and back, 2.5 front and back. So I'm not going to read you all of it, but I'm going to read you the first paragraph. This is from the book First Chronicles, and it's chapter 6, and I'm going to start at verse 1. And it goes to 53, but I'm only going to go to, it looks like about 20 names in the first paragraph.
Okay.
And I'm just going to read you the definitions of the names. You can look it up. I am not changing anything at all. These are those names. United by a refugee, an ally to the bitter, an ally to the high people, anointing the seat of association, and is the strength of God from high people. The wish of God drawing out people rebelliously, the wish of God and a volunteer and worshiper of God. God is helper from the high desirable place. God is helper against the mouth of a serpent. Father of plenty to depopulate from the forceful. Jah has risen in the rebellious. Jah has said, he is my brother of goodness and his just brother of anger. Jah has helped, sending him Jehovah's favored. So Jah has helped. Jah has said the brother of goodness is just in his retribution, and a portion of Jah. Jah has helped. Jah has prevailed. Jehovah has righted. Does that sound like names to you?
What was Jaw supposed to be?
Oh, it's the Jewish nickname for shortened Jehovah, Jah.
Okay.
Popular in Jamaica.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what that means, yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, if that sounds like a regular list of names to you, it doesn't to me. It sounds like a story.
Yeah.
Okay. So, either some 20 Hebrew women there, whatever it was, 25, maybe 30. I didn't count them. Either they appropriately named all of their children in the correct order to make parts of sentences, or it's not names.
Yeah, it seems like they're titles.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would be the significance there, though?
Oh, all the lists of names and all the names in the Bible are like that.
Yeah.
Every single one of them. There's no exceptions. So what does that mean? It means we're being told a story. It's
Yeah.
not a history lesson. It's just not a history lesson at all. Yes, there's some historical figures in there. It lends some validity to it in a shallow view of it, and keeps it from getting thrown away and stuff. But that's not what it's about. It's not
Okay.
about the historical people. It's not about that at all.
Yeah, I think I can agree to that.
Yeah, I mean we've disproven it historically plenty, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's no part of. I mean, the historical accuracy of it has nothing to do with the importance of the text, any more than the cherry tree in George Washington's front yard of his dad when he was a kid is important to George Washington being a truthful person. It just doesn't matter. That's not the point.
Yeah, exactly.
So I see great truths in the Bible having nothing to do with the history of this planet. I
Okay.
see a little bit of history of the planet, but it's accurate, and it doesn't argue with science.
Okay.
Like, for instance, the 5 days of creation are 5 events, but those events would nearly destroy the planet and kill all life. But we also see 5 catastrophic Earth events in the fossil record.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that works great for me.
Okay.
Like the mile deep chalk beds and somewhere over there in Great Britain. I mean, those are made of diatoms, which are one-celled animals, and those one-celled animals piled up out of the water, or plate tectonics moved it up out of the water. But anyway, it's like a mile thick in places. Dude, that's a lot of one-celled critters. And we're going to say nothing catastrophic happened there? They just all happened to die in one pile? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, I'm not sure it had to have all been deposited at once.
Well, actually, yeah, it does have to have been deposited all at once.
How's that?
Well, for one thing, it's pure. There's not other sediments in with it. I mean, it's just pure chalk. Just white as white can be. It's just white chalk. There's no weathering. There's no silt. There's no other things in with it. I mean, a mile thick chalk, bro. That's a lot of chalk.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, I can't say definitively, of course. But when you have all one thing all in one place, that looks at least like, I don't know, hydrologic sorting or something. It certainly did not build up over huge amounts of time. We don't find fish bones in the middle of it.
Okay. That'd be interesting to look into.
Just nothing but chalk. A lot of chalk.
But I'd be curious to see how you'd respond to, because I've been having these discussions where creationists will tell me that the days of creation, they have to be literal 24-hour days.
That's what they think, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's a decent argument. They say, because each time, or at least with most of the days, they say, and then morning came, and then night came, and then the next day.
Sure.
So I'd be
Sure.
curious how you interpret that.
Well, I take the text to be very, very literally, and I really pay attention. Do those people that profess that notice there was no sun for 3 days? And how do you have a 24-hour day with no sun?
Okay.
So the first 3 days are out.
Yeah.
Those are just completely... Well, that's half of it.
I mean, my response is just a morning and night could be a metaphor for something.
Sure.
Such as probably the dawn of an age, perhaps brought about by a cataclysm.
Yeah, that's what I think it is.
Yeah.
It's a new age via cataclysmic event that was inflicted onto this planet. And we have record of that. We see it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's plenty. You got the KT boundary and the PK boundary, and I mean, you've heard of this stuff.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, if you go right down through the fossil record all the way to the bottom, you had like one-celled critters, diatoms, and such.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get the Cambrian explosion. Well, there's a catastrophic event right there between those two. I'm not going to bore you. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you get the idea, and you've heard of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's an interesting take.
Yeah, I think that it is true. There have been 5 catastrophic events. Like I made this argument with Nephilim. Of course, he won't accept any of my. Although I think they're obviously true, and someone who's not like emotionally attached to the text, like yourself, would see this right away. Just doing an internal critique of the Christian text, the Old and New Testament, the Bible, the Judaic religion. According to that book, man is not perfect. According to that book, God works with man. So, according to that book, man is perfected in heaven, not on this earth. And anyone who knows the text lightly would agree with all that, and Nephilim Free did too. But then I said the following. If God's working, he's not resting. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if he's not resting, then there hasn't been a Sabbath.
Okay.
So there hasn't been a 7th day yet. Now they want 6 days of creation, and the seventh day happened a really, really long time ago. But that's impossible according to the text. So it can't be talking about 24-hour days. It has to be talking about huge spans of time, which are undefined.
Okay.
Because obviously, we're on this earth, we're in the sixth day. This is the sixth day, the day that man is on the planet. And we're not perfect, so we're not in heaven, so there's been no Sabbath.
And there's no seventh day mentioned?
Sure there is.
Okay.
God rests the seventh day, for in the seventh day he had created all things, and he rests from his work. Yeah.
But he's not currently working, is what you're saying? He's still resting?
No, I'm saying he is currently working, so he can't be resting if he's working. Those are
Okay.
Those are contradictory. It can't be both resting and working.
So I thought you said that we're still in the seventh day.
No, I said we're still in the sixth day, not seventh.
Okay.
This is the sixth day. So I think the sixth day is all of these life forms on this planet in their forms is the sixth day, including us. How long has that been going on? I don't even know.
And then God resting would be after the rapture?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's when we're perfected. That's when he can stop working on us.
Okay.
Which doesn't mean he stops working altogether. Just means that's the seventh day.
Okay. That is an interesting argument. I would tend to probably agree because I think that it has to be something deeper and more meaningful than just a literal day. And there's no reason, there's no reason God would confine himself to that time.
Well, they also don't like it when you say, but the Bible also says 1,000 years is a day and a day is as 1,000 years. In other words, these time frames, from our perspective, especially before there was no sun, don't make any sense.
Good point. Good point.
As 24-hour days, they make no sense. The first 3 days, there's no sun. How are you going to have night and day with no sun? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't understand why the creationists they're so stuck on that very particular point of view. It's almost like
What creates
I said earlier,
division?
it's like they have such weak faith that it's either all or nothing.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you what, if you present a serious argument to me that you're serious about and it makes sense, I'm going to have to stop and pray and think about it and research it. And I'm not going to just blow you off just because you don't believe the same as me. I mean, isn't that assuming that I'm right about everything?
Yeah, I mean, no, you should never assume that you're done learning stuff.
Right on, bro.
And
good for you.
I think that especially Neff seems like, oh, I've figured it all out. I don't need to know anything else.
It's kind of sad, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think were Christ to speak to him, he would not go, oh, you've done a great job. 'Cause for one thing, he's offensive.
Yeah.
That's not great.
And prideful.
That's also, yeah. How many times in the Bible does it say pride is an abomination?
Yeah.
Just, I mean, if they're gonna talk crap about homosexuality, they should also be talking about their own pride.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because it uses that very same word, abomination.
What do you think about some of the Old Testament stuff, like laying with another man is an abomination?
Okay, well, I think that if the point of us being here is to have a difficult life for most of us,
mm-hmm.
and that we can learn to be brothers and sisters, and we can learn to love each other and have empathy and understanding for each other because of our diverse adversity. That is, two pregnant women in the grocery store are allowed to go talk to each other. You know? Because both of them have bladder control issues, both of them, their backs hurting, whatever. They know the deal. Two ex-military people are allowed to just go and talk anytime. They don't even have to meet each other, but just, you got an army cap, you can go talk. That's all it takes. Some commonality of experience, and something that was hard or something that was even detrimental causes bonds between us. So if what we're here for is to learn the two greatest commandments, learn to love the Lord thy God above all else and love thy neighbor as thyself. If that's what we're here to do, then the more of us that do it, the better off heaven will be. So if you don't reproduce, and I mean people who devote their lives to business, people who, I mean, other than birth defects or accidental deaths, premature, then all of that would be considered, quote unquote, an abomination. That is, you're cutting God off at the knees. He doesn't get to do his thing because you're not having babies. Okay, is that wrong? Well, in that way, but it's the same amount of wrong as pride. It's not a gigantic thing. And then you have Matthew 19:10 through 12. And I was talking to a bisexual witch on Messenger Reveals, and she agreed with absolutely everything I'm going to say right here. In Matthew 19:10 through 12, the apostles ask of Christ, if a man is like a woman, we all know what that means, is it good that he should marry? And I'm sure that means traditional marry, right? So that means marry a woman. In other words, should the guy pretend to not be gay? I think that's pretty clear what they're really asking. He doesn't answer the question. Apparently not important enough to answer. He says, instead he responds with this: not all will receive this saying, but only those, meaning who it applies to. This saying is not for all, but for those who would receive it. Some eunuchs are born of the womb. Now, that's a really weird birth defect if they're using the word eunuch to mean castrated male.
Mm-hmm.
But before the word homosexual, which is a medical or scientific term, people in the world had expressions for homosexuals because guess what? Homosexuals existed back then too. So they had a word for it. Turns out in the ancient Near East, the word was eunuch. A man who's not a man, if you can dig that.
Yeah.
So he says some eunuchs are born of the womb. Some eunuchs are made eunuchs by other eunuchs. Some still choose to be. So Marty completely agreed with me. That covers the bases. Every homosexual everywhere was either born that way, made that way by another homosexual, or chose to be. Is that true of eunuchs? No. It's just not true. I mean, it's completely inaccurate except for the middle one. Okay. And then they're made eunuchs by surgeons, not by other eunuchs. So it's still wrong. Okay? And then it ends with this: if one can receive the good news for the kingdom of God's sake, let them. Well, is Christ into teasing homosexuals about going to heaven by giving them the good news? Is that his thing? Is he gentle, or is he just an ass? So if he's not being an ass, then apparently he's saying tell them the good news of heaven, which is a promise that they can go. Now, you won't hear most Christians talking about that part of the Bible or looking into those words and seeing what they mean, but it's right there in Matthew 19:10 through 12, just plain as day, man.
Yeah, I think that's what's important about Christianity is just the message of forgiveness, and like these little things, they don't matter. I mean,
Sure.
It may not be the best lifestyle or decision, and I'm not necessarily agreeing with that, but
Right.
that shouldn't affect the way that you love someone or just respect them as a person.
Right.
And I think this like gatekeeping of heaven that a lot of like Christians like Nephilim do is again connected to pride, because they're like, well, I'm a better Christian, or I'm the right kind of Christian, or
well,
Christians
I don't get
only
mad at him
get into heaven.
I don't really get actually mad at him, although I can get frustrated with him.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know when he's presented with the truth, not by somebody like me, but when he's presented with the truth, he's going to have to accept it. And he's going to be, you know what it means? All of this, it means you're going to cry less than he has to. That's what this means.
Mm-hmm.
You're just not going to be that upset because you didn't mess up that bad. whereas he's going to be really like self-loathing and full of sorrow, and he's gonna have to cry a lot because
Yeah.
he's just been bad. He's just been bad to people.
Well, he didn't go through that growth that's necessary.
Yeah, I guess not.
And I guess, yeah, it would be a longer stay in purgatory kind of thing. But
I guess
I
you
mean-
could put it that way. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I would actually be glad if I die and I wake up, at the pearly gates, or even at the trial for the pearly gates. But
It's all very, very interesting to me. I mean, I would challenge you to critique yourself and ask yourself this question: could you read the Bible not through Christian eyes?
yeah, I think
Yeah?
I think that's I'm definitely starting to do that a lot more than I used to. Like, I used to think it was just like all trash, but that's because I was reading it a little bit more literally.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're at least somewhat a fan of Jordan Peterson, because he's talking about the observations of the human condition within the text.
Yeah.
And if you looked at it just from that point of view, it's flippin' genius. And I don't mean just kind of smart. It's crazy smart.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, like Jordan Peterson is impressed by it, and he's a genius. There's an expression in literature you might be familiar with, no Tyndale, no Shakespeare. That is, Tyndale and Coverdale did the Old and New Testament from the original Aramaic and Greek and Hebrew and Chaldee. And they did not go through the Council of Nicaea, and they did their own transliteration of it. That's this one right. That's this one right here, the 1537 Matthew's Bible. So it's in Middle English, which is, you got to loosen up your brain a little bit. But it's by far the most accurate translation that exists. And that came out in 1537, and at least the Old Testament was available to one William Shakespeare. And William Shakespeare read it, or parts thereof, and saw the depth of the stories and was inspired to start writing his own stories in that same style.
Yeah,
And he got kind of popular for doing that. He stole it out of the Old Testament.
Yeah, I was thinking about Shakespeare when you were talking about how the names tell a story.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Funny
Picking
how
up on a
related
similar
that
spirit.
is, and there seems to be a disconnect in there. There was no direct association, but you're absolutely correct. That's what happened.
Yeah, there's seems to be a common spirit there.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's common in a lot of different faith traditions, though. I particularly like Eastern ones for their kind of dualism and just the way that they kind of conceive of how the universe is kind of folded in on itself and gives birth to itself. I think there's a lot of interesting ideas there. Yin and yang, I really like.
Yeah,
Kinda cliche,
yeah. Well,
but-
I think that's just a fact.
Yeah,
No one has to agree with yin and yang. It's just the way it is. Yeah, and I mean the Native American, I can't remember which tribe. There's so many. I think it's Blackfoot. Have the story of the black wolf and the white wolf. Have you heard this story?
No.
The young boy says to the grandfather, he says, what do you mean something I did was bad? And the grandfather says, well, to the grandson, he says, in you is a white wolf, and in you is a black wolf. and they fight.
Hmm.
And the grandson says, which one will win? And the old man says, the one you feed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think these ideas repeat themselves because they're true.
Because there's, yeah, you don't have to like it.
Yeah. But yeah. Hey, Mikey, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
So I'm just listening because I don't know much about theology. I'm just learning now.
Well, you'll do yourself a favor to not learn from me. Everyone disagrees.
But at least I'm getting it from your side.
Well, what you're going to hear from me is strange, and people are not going to agree with me. Secular scholars and theologians are not going to agree with me about these things. Just to be honest with you.
I don't think they've figured it out
See,
yet.
you're
Anyway.
just giving. You're giving me something from your perspective.
Yeah.
Oh,
But as I said before, what is not acceptable that I say also works in logic, also works in the definitions of the text, also is universally true, also has predictive power. So that's how we test what is reality, what is valuable. And the view I've adopted has all that. Like, I can introduce you to people who knew me in 2012 and 2013 when I first started talking about something entering into our solar system that blocks out 3 specific stars, and I stated which stars. And NASA didn't find that until 2017.
Huh.
Now,
Wow.
in a sphere, there's 360 degrees, but those are infinitely divisible. There's literally an infinite number of directions out from this Earth, out from this solar system. To say 4 or 5 years in advance, depending on who I'm talking about, heard me say it, to say that something was going to come perfectly between those particular 3 stars, I can't do that, but it's in the text.
Do you have a video on that or anything?
No, I'm working on writing a paper about some fundamental ideas before I can ever get to that. That's way on down the road, man.
Okay.
I mean, I could just tell it to you right now. It's real simple. You look up the story of Jericho,
Okay.
and you look up the phrase. If you look up the phrase "Ark of the Covenant," or you could look just one time in the whole Bible, this one word appears. It's only in that one story. The word's Dagon, Dagon. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
If you look for the word Dagon, you'll find it on any search engine. And it's not different in each text. So it doesn't matter which one you read. So when the Ark of the Covenant is in the house of Dagon, Dagon being an old, fragile man, he falls off of his stool and he chops off his head and his hands on the threshold. A threshold's a piece of wood or a rock that keeps the straw in your house because you're on a dirt floor. That's what a threshold really is. I don't care how old and fragile you are. You can't just fall off a stool and cut off your head and hands on a threshold. Okay? But with the view that I've adopted of the text, what it actually is saying is Ark of the Covenant means heaven. Dagon means the constellation Dagon. Fall off his stool means lose his stature. And cut off his head and hands means head and hands won't be available to us visually. Okay? So understanding that, starting in 2012, I've been going to nasa.gov looking for something that's going to block out the head and hands of Dagon. Well, the head and hands of Dagon, first of all, Dagon later became Poseidon and is now Draco the dragon. Okay? So if you look at sky charts, you look at Draco the dragon, you see the head of the dragon and the 2 front claws of the dragon form almost very close to a perfect triangle of 3 stars right there by the North Star. Well, if you look for comet, I'm going to say this part slow. If If you look for Comet Charlie, that's C 2017. That's the year they found it. K2. I don't know what the K2 means. Pan-STARRS. Pannstars. Comet C 2017 K2 Pan-STARRS. You can actually look up a three-dimensional image on that, the trajectory and where it's going and how it's going to pierce our solar system, wrap around the sun, and go back out. There is no chance it's not going to block our view of those three stars. There's zero chance. It is going to.
Okay. And
I know
just
there
based
are
on
more
your-
than 10 people heard me say that before we ever found it.
And then it happened.
Well, it hasn't
Or
happened
it
yet.
hasn't happened.
It's still on its way.
Okay.
It's about as far away right now. It's somewhere in distance, the same distance, though coming from the north, somewhere around the distance of Uranus.
All right.
It's about that far away right now. But its coma, its sublimating tail, is about the same size as the planet Jupiter right now. So it's a record breaker. It's sublimating further away with a bigger coma than we've ever seen. So if you just go to nasa.gov and look for record-breaking comet C 2017, or use any of the other keywords I gave you, you'll find it super easy.
All right. Is that the only one that you've applied this method to?
Oh no, there's been thousands of things actually, but how much time do you have?
Yeah. I mean, we should have further discussions. For sure.
Well, I tell you, I don't think it's what people say it is, but I do think it's really serious. And I got to say, it's caused me to believe things like I'm okay and you are too. I was huge on like carrying a grudge and being unforgiving of people. I mean, I was just huge on that my whole life. And I'll tell you somewhat why. I was raised Roman Catholic and the priest tried to have sex with me.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
I was a kid. I was 12. And he coached me for a year. He tried to get in that position where it would be okay. I mean, he really tried to play me, and I had an absentee dad, and he knew that.
Yeah.
So to me, he was like my adopted dad. I spent 3 hours every Sunday evening with him. I was an altar boy, and this guy wants to have sex with me.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom raised strong kids, and at 12 years old, I was strong enough to not insult him and not get mad and still say, no, that's really not my thing. I'm sorry, But I'll tell you what, I was walking away from churches. My mom told me the Catholic Church was right, and then I find out that the Catholic Church can't be trusted. So I walked away for 30 years. I was an anti-theist. I preached against the existence of God. I quoted so much Darwin that, I can't even tell you.
Yeah, well, sorry to hear that, but
No, it's made me who I am.
yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah,
I'm
it's,
stronger for it.
I don't think that that's necessarily from religion. I think that there's a lot of institutions like that just
Well, I
they
was
give,
12.
They give predators yeah.
A place to hide, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more than just
Exactly.
Catholicism. It's more than just religion. Absolutely.
Yeah. But I think that blind trust is kind of
Mhm.
what allows it to happen.
Yeah, well, I blindly trusted the guy, and he completely betrayed me,
Yeah.
So I had a good, solid, justifiable reason to walk away from religion at 12 years. Dude, we used to sit and watch, like, deep, intelligent movies and talk philosophy. And we did that for a year before he hit on me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Really disappointing. Not that I'm mad at the guy. I'm not.
Well, I think it's probably understandable and healthy to be a little bit angry, but I think it is important to kind of forgive and as much as you can, but
Well,
not necessarily trust that person again, but
well, he's a little dead right now, so
yeah,
that's not an issue.
yeah. So how
Not
did
that I killed him. I didn't want to make it sound like that. He died of old age, actually.
yeah,
It wasn't me.
for the record.
For the record, it wasn't me.
So how did you kind of get over like the grudge or whatever you were feeling?
Well, as I say, I was 42 years old. I was an anti-theist. I won't bore you with too many details. On a whim, and from a academic point of view, I read one story from the Bible just because I was curious. I didn't think it was going to be important or anything. But I was visualizing the story of David and Goliath in my mind, which is what I'm writing a paper on right now. I hope the paper's important. It's more likely to be kicked to the curb and laughed at than anything else, quite honestly. That's a lot more likely than anything else. But I'm writing a paper on it. I would share that paper with anyone who thought it was interesting. I was picturing the story in my head. There's plenty of colors and distances and descriptions and stuff in the story. So I had a little movie in my head thing going on. And the movie took over. And I've never done drugs. I've never done hallucinogenics. I wasn't sleep deprived. I wasn't malnourished. I wasn't dehydrated. I was awake. I wasn't even asleep when this happened. And it translated the story of David and Goliath to mean not what Christians think. And stuff that is actually can be shown in science and in the definitions to every single word in the story. That is, it is scientifically plausible in theories of physics, chemistry, and electric theories. It's totally plausible. But it's not at all what Christians say it is. Not in the least.
What is your take on it?
Well, the view that I've adopted is that, okay, so do you know the story of David and Goliath? I'm sure you know it at least briefly.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's play it out. I'm just going to verbally describe it for you and see what kind of picture you get in your head. Okay, so you're right there on the sand in the Arabic nation, and everything's just sand, and there's some rocks, and there's some mountains in the background. Okay, and there's a bit of a valley between the warring side and the two warring sides, Israel and Palestine. Okay. And the scene describes everybody lined up. So I'm going to mention them in order. And I'm going to mention them starting from your left and working toward your right. Okay?
Okay.
So the only king that shows up for the story is Saul. Okay? And Saul has David going around him, has David's brothers going around him, has the army going around him, has all this stuff going around him. Okay? Now, next closest to Saul is little tiny David. And David is described as being ruddish. I'm not gonna go over all the details, but all the details work. So he's ruddish. You know what the word ruddish means?
No.
It's reddish brown.
Okay.
Okay. So like people from that nation, if they've got a sunburn, are ruddish.
Okay.
Okay. But only if they have a sunburn. But anyway, so then you have David's 7 brothers. Now, 4 of them stay home. They're not there at the war. But 3 of them come to the war, and the 3 that show up for the war, they stand out of size order. The biggest guy's not in the front. The biggest guy's in the middle. Okay? Then you have the army of Israel. And then further out from Saul from that, you have the army of Palestine. And further out from Saul from that, you have the giant Goliath. Now, Goliath ends up with a stone in his forehead that sinks in. It doesn't bounce off. It's like stuck there, right? And he's got 4 pieces of armament. So in his right hand, he's got a spear with an iron head. In his left hand, a sword. And yes, they had steel back in those days, and people don't expect that, but it's true. So they had steel swords. Between his shoulders, that's the front of his shoulders, a target of brass, and out in front of him, someone else carrying a great shield. Okay, so you got that in your head?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now fly over it to where you're about 250, 300 feet in the air and look down.
Okay.
Okay, so the two armies that were just a row of human beings that you couldn't see through are now two lines of human beings. All right? Okay. And the Goliath is way off to your right-hand side and Saul way off to your left-hand side. Got it?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to say two words. Solar system.
Okay.
And I'm not using word association between Saul and Saul, although they do sound similar. I'm not using that fallacy. So you've got the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, and yes, Earth's the biggest of the stony planets. Inner and outer asteroid belts. The giant Goliath with the stone in his forehead, that is the fifth one out. That is Jupiter with the great red eye, having four pieces of armament. One looks like brass, one looks like iron, one looks like steel, and the other one is a big black thing with little pointy hooks on it. And by the way, the definition says it has pointy hooks. And there are snow-capped mountain ranges on Ganymede. That's a fact.
Okay.
So, or white-capped. I can't swear there. We think it's water. I don't really know. Could be, I don't know, some other gas compressed, cold. Doesn't have to be water. But, so the more you get into the details of the story of David and Goliath, the better it describes the first five planets, four major moons over Jupiter, and the two asteroid belts. And I mean, no, not every aspect of reality is in the story, but then it's only 2 pages and I can carry it. But everything that is in the story is there in reality. Like, absolutely all of it, without exception.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a little bit of sense. There's a lot of ancient people made up stories about the stars and stuff like that.
Do you think that, I'll give you a for instance, do you already know right now that Pluto has 2 moons?
I was not sure about Pluto, no.
Okay. Would you please describe to me the 2 moons over Pluto?
I wasn't aware that it had any moons.
Right, that's right. Okay. So describe them accurately, please.
I don't know.
Well, just describe them. Just guess.
Probably looks like a rock.
You want to give them some color, some shape, some size, something? And by the way, you have to be accurate.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hey, what I'm showing you is we can't do that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the story of David and Goliath, size differentials, coloration, and distances of the 4 Jovian moons. Do you know when the 4 Jovian moons were discovered?
No.
Galileo Galilei, 1610. You know how old the Old Testament is?
How old it is?
Mm-hmm.
Not precisely, no.
Okay, is it more than 1 year older than 1610?
Yes.
Okay, it's a lot older than that, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a accurate description of those 4 Jovian moons.
Yeah.
In 1 Samuel, Old Testament stuff.
I mean, I'm not sure what ancient astrology was like much.
Well, I can tell you one thing. When you find something, you get to name it.
Yeah.
Galilei named the Jovian moons.
Yeah.
Okay, so nobody knew they were there. There's nowhere in any history book before that where they existed. Nowhere.
Yeah.
Except the Bible and other religious texts.
But were people aware of it from the Bible?
No. Like I said, people will not agree with me on this. I'm telling you that people will argue with me. I'm honest about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to follow. Like what you said earlier about it working where it should.
Yeah.
it seems if it was a coded message, that
Mhm.
at least someone would have decoded it.
Why?
Like
The
at
Bible says it's
least,
not going to be decoded till the end is near. Why would it
well,
be decoded before the end was near? If
I
it
mean,
says it's not going to. I mean, if it's right.
you could say that if you were making it up, but I, why I think I don't know. Is the end near? Why?
Besides,
But
there's a
why would that?
necessity for it to be encoded. There's a necessity for it to be not clear.
Okay, what is that?
Well, have you ever heard of the Dome of the Rock?
Yes.
Have you ever heard of Solomon's Temple?
Yeah.
Why do you even know about that stuff?
Uh, from I know it from history, the history of Jerusalem.
Right. Did you know that right now they're vying for ownership. The Hebrew people, the Jews, are vying for ownership of the Dome of the Rock. Did you know that?
Vying with who? Among themselves, or?
The Palestinians who have it.
I didn't know that was currently
Yeah, it's kind
up
of a
in the
big
air.
deal, actually. They're
Okay.
trying to get that land back
Yeah.
because they want to rebuild Solomon's Temple. And why do you think they'd want to rebuild the Solomon's Temple on the land that is the Dome of the Rock? Why would they want to do that?
Um, I don't know. Just to rebuild it. I mean, they've rebuilt it before, haven't they?
Yeah, yeah, they have.
Yeah.
You know why they rebuild it? Because they're trying
Uh-uh.
to bring about the end of the earth.
Oh yeah, I think I've heard of that.
Yeah, of course. There are religious zealots who think that their actions, meeting the requirements of what they think the text means, will bring the end to all suffering,
Mhm.
personal and worldwide. That's what they think. Which makes them the deity if they can do that.
Yeah, in a way.
Okay, well that's a problem. That would be wrong. That would make God impotent. If God exists, God is impotent for that reason alone. On the other
Well,
hand, if you don't tell people what you're going to do and they have no way of knowing, then everything you do is a surprise. And that makes you impotent.
mhm. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily rule out a God who would allow his creation to kind of bring about the rapture or whatever. I mean, he
I
would
actually
have.
believe in some ways we are, but it's not that
Yeah,
stuff.
it's kind of like if God would have programmed evolution into the cell. It's like he's allowing natural processes to be a part of his plan, and it isn't necessarily playing them like a puppet, but
Right.
he set up the initial conditions.
Hmm. Hey, do you know what the end of every species is?
No.
Extinction.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yep.
That includes us. We don't like to think about that, but that includes us.
Eventually.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go smoke a cigarette, man. You're a real joy. You have anything that you think I said was full of crap you'd like to challenge me on?
I think I mean, I challenged you as much as I could when you brought it
Okay.
up, but
Right on.
I'll definitely think about some of the stuff.
Well, I appreciate you even letting me talk to you, bro. I really, really do. I think it's more important than I can actually express.
Yeah,
Uh,
thanks to you too. I really enjoyed the conversation. These are the kind of discussions I was looking to find.
Well, I tell you what, I'll do this with you as often as you like for as many hours as you like. I will neglect my job, and I'm not joking. I'm serious. I'll neglect my job and decrease my pay to do this for you.
I believe you.
I really will.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
So anytime you email me at that same address, and say I want to talk to you, give me 12 hours notice so I can adjust
Yeah.
because I don't check the email all the time. Okay.
Yeah, me neither.
But you give me 12 hours. You give me 12 hours, and you put a time and a date. I'm there.
All right.
And you can challenge me and grill me. I'm not gonna yank on your chain. I'm not gonna feed you a line of crap. I'm just not gonna. I don't have to.
Yeah. And I think it'd be really interesting to have some more group discussions with you.
Yeah, sure. I'm up for that.
And I liked the way you were kind of wrangling us the other day. You were kind of moderating, trying to.
Well, he was being a jerk, and I didn't appreciate him treating one of my brothers like that.
Yeah, but I'm interested in kind of trying to get at the impasse between two people when they're having a discussion.
I pointed it out to him.
Yeah.
He just didn't care.
Yeah.
He wants the impasse.
I mean, some people are not looking to kind of smooth over the impasse and try to understand the other person.
I mean, I pointed out to him, then he immediately used it as a straw man.
Yeah. That's just
I
how
mean,
that's just how Neff is.
You can't get dirtier than that. Yeah, it's just dirty. I'm not going to spend any more time on him.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm almost at that point, but I'm just still...
I found this really interesting. Have you ever been trained in speech pattern recognition?
No, but I mean,
It's really interesting stuff.
I've taken a look at like amateur. I mean, I'm an amateur in it.
Okay, so but you have found it interesting. You're going to understand what I'm about to say.
Yeah, probably.
So when I had a discussion with him before, and not so much when you and I were both there together, and this gentleman whose name I can't recall right now with the interesting accent, we're all there. There was only two people in the side chat who had exactly the same writing style and the same spelling errors, who both agreed with Neff.
Yeah.
Now, when I was there was 6 of them.
All against you?
What's that?
All against you?
No, I mean, in the side chat, there were 6 people with the same spelling errors saying the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
So that tells me it's his wife.
Probably.
They just have a bunch of sock accounts, and they try to sway the audience any way possible. And what I mean by that is they are liars for Jesus. They are just liars.
I mean, he tried to tell me that he healed some disease she had, and I was like, I just don't believe you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wonder how many of those people are actually sock accounts then. I've probably seen a couple of them.
Well, I know what'll happen from here is you'll watch.
Yeah.
And you'll see him now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's his wife Sharon on another computer in the side chat. And they have several sock accounts. Let's see. Some of them are Nellis, Evolution is Zombie Science.
Ooh.
Shoot, I can't remember. I'd have to go over the list again. Anyway, they have the same spelling errors, the same speech patterns.
Yeah.
It's the same human.
Interesting. I'll keep an eye out for that then.
Yeah. Oh, last night when I got off the show with you guys, I got in the side chat and accused 2 of those people of being sock accounts, and Sharon was running them. And someone who is a moderator had one of their comments. Evolution is Zombie Science, who is a moderator, had one of their comments that was erased. You got to be kidding me.
No, yeah.
Evolution is Zombie Science is there every show, never misses, always completely agrees, and they got a comment erased right after I said, "Oh, this is a sock account." Yeah, how dumb do you think I am? Apparently, pretty dumb. Anyway,
to get some of this stuff over on people, you have to be.
I guess.
But.
Well, it's an honor to speak with you, and I'm serious when I say 12 hours and I'm there. I'm actually very, very serious about that.
All right, thanks.
And if ever I say something you think is bullcrap, call me out, man. I'm not scared of that.
Yeah, I will.
Right on.
But we've got a rapport going. We're both pretty civil, so.
Yeah, I think you are. I think you're a reasonable dude, and I appreciate that.
We can handle our disagreements like adults.
I hope so.
Right.
I expect as much. All right, man. I'm gonna go smoke a cigarette because I'm fiending real bad.
All right. Awesome.
And
well, thanks.
Emotionally stunted emoticon. I think that's what you're calling yourself. Or did you call him Chris?
I called him Mikey.
No, my name is Mike.
Mike.
Yeah.
Mike. Thanks
Mikey.
for dropping in, man, and spending some time with us. And I offer you the same as I offer Taylor.
Sure thing there, Richard.
All right. Thank you very much, and thanks for sharing some of your story about your land and and where you're at and what's going on with you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, man.
Okay, you guys have peace.
You too. See ya.
Next time.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So we're gonna have a discussion later. You gotta go, Mikey.
Let me see what I do have until like I have like 15, 18 minutes.
All right. Well, maybe we should do it a little later then.
Or if we should start something later, but I would be available like 12 Eastern time.
All right.
What time would that be for you though?
12. That's in a couple hours. That would be 10 o'clock for me.
Oh, 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. All right. So I would message you and tell you when I'm available.
Okay.
Well, I think I did send you the topics we might cover, and
Yeah, it's a good list.
again, yeah, I guess as much we'll just cover we'll just cover as we go along.
Okay. Alrighty. Sounds good.
All right then. Well, sounds good. Well, as we say in the Caribbean, we go sight up.
Sight up.
We go sight, like to see up. It just means I'm going to see you later. Sight up.
Sight up. Okay.
So we go sight up.
All right.
That's how we say it.
All right.
All right then.
Well,
Later.
we will sight up later. Yeah.
We go sight up. All right.
All right. See ya.